Welcome back to the Deep Dive,
Yeah, welcome back.
where we like to, as you know,
Get right into it.
get right into it, get to the core of things.
Absolutely.
Today we are diving into something
Oh, yeah.
pretty wild, I'd say.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one.
The Book of the Law.
Liber AL vel Legis.
Yes, Liber AL vel Legis, also known as the Book of the Law.
Right.
This is a text that was received, channeled by, XC33 equals 418
That's right.
to DCL X6.
Uh-huh.
This comes from a publication associated with,
A certain tradition.
yeah, a certain esoteric tradition that we all know and love.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think we should just jump right in.
let's jump right in because there's a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely.
And we're going to try to really get
The
to
heart of it.
the heart of some of these core ideas and some of the intense, I would say, claims that it makes.
Very intense.
Yeah.
You came to the right place, though, if you want to understand it.
That's right.
That's what we're here for.
So right from the start, we run into
Central figure.
its central figures.
Yes.
And first we have nu, described as the circumference,
Right.
but nowhere found.
Yes.
So what do we make of that?
Well, I think that's a really good question right off the bat, because this idea of something that is a circumference, that is a boundary, but is nowhere to be found, suggests that it's almost like this potentiality, right? This infinite expanse that we can't quite grasp.
It's like trying to
It's like trying to hold on.
grab smoke.
Yeah, exactly. Like trying to hold on to water. It's
Fire.
always slipping through your finger.
And then to complement that,
Yeah.
we have Hadith,
Hadith.
who is, not extended,
Right.
and lives in Cobbs as its house.
Yes, in Cobbs.
And this is really key.
Yes.
Hadith is everywhere the center.
Okay, so if nu is this kind of infinite, boundless potentiality, then Hadith is like the spark at the center of it all,
Okay.
right? The point that's actually present everywhere simultaneously.
So even though Hadith is not extended, it's everywhere the center.
It's everywhere, the center, exactly.
Okay.
And that's a really interesting kind of paradox.
Yeah, and then
You like?
it says, she shall be known, and I never.
Okay, so she being nu
Right.
and I being Hadith.
So what are we to make of this?
Well, it seems to be implying that nu, the outward manifestation, the universe as we perceive it, is what we can come to understand, right?
Yeah.
But Hadith, the core, the essence, the consciousness behind it all, that remains hidden.
So it's like we can see the waves,
Exactly.
but we can't really see the ocean itself.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. We can see the effects, but the cause, the source, remains kind of mysterious,
Right.
a secret.
Okay, so we've got this cosmic setup,
Uh-huh.
and then the text kind of throws a curveball at us
Okay.
because it says, the rituals of the old time are black,
Oh, wow.
and we should cast away, purge.
So this is a clean break from the past.
Yeah, it really feels like it's saying, okay, all that stuff you were doing before, we're starting fresh.
Right.
It's all got to go.
The old ways are not just outdated. They're actually harmful, Black.
Right.
They're holding us back.
Cast away, purge.
Yeah.
Those are really
Strong words.
strong words.
Active words.
Yeah.
This is not a passive process.
Right.
This is something that you have to actively engage in, this purging, this casting away of the old.
And it's not just
Make room.
it's not just about getting rid of the old.
Right.
This is all tied in
To this new era of knowledge.
a new era of knowledge, like the old ways of knowing
Are gone.
gone.
And now we have this new way of knowing.
Right. So let's really get into Hadith. Yeah, because
Okay.
this entity is described as the flame that burns in every heart of man and in the core of every star.
So not some distant God out there.
Right.
This is something that's within us.
Imminent.
Imminent. Exactly. It's the spark of life, the consciousness, the passion that drives us.
And yet it says,
Oh.
yet therefore is the knowledge of me,
Yeah.
the knowledge of death.
Okay, so wait. If it's the flame of life, how can knowledge of it be knowledge of death?
Right. That seems like a
Paradox.
paradox,
Right.
a contradiction.
But I think what it's getting at is that to truly know Hadith, you have to undergo a kind of death.
Nope.
A death of the ego, a death of your old ways of thinking, your limited beliefs.
Like a caterpillar
Exactly.
has to die to become a butterfly.
Precisely. It's a transformation, a metamorphosis.
Okay, so we're dying
To be reborn
to be reborn
on a higher level.
on a higher level.
Yeah.
And then there's some other really interesting self-descriptions that Hadith gives.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, the magician and the exorcist,
Hmm.
the axle of the wheel, and the cube and the circle.
Packed with symbolism.
So what are we seeing here?
Well, magician suggests this power to shape reality,
Yeah.
right? To transform
Right.
exorcist implies dispelling negativity, getting rid of what's holding us back.
Yeah.
Axle of the wheel speaks to a central point, a stabilizing force
Okay.
around which everything revolves.
Okay, providing balance.
Providing balance, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the cube in the circle, that's a classic alchemical symbol, the squaring of the circle.
Oh, interesting.
Right, where you bring together the material, the square, with the spiritual, the circle, the infinite.
So it's that balance again?
It's that balance again
Yeah,
between the earthly and the cosmic.
Right, and then there's this statement
Uh-huh.
that it's almost like the opposite of what you'd expect.
Okay, let's hear it.
Come unto me
Hmm.
is a foolish word,
Okay.
for it is I that go.
So usually you think of seeking the divine, right? You go to the mountaintop, you meditate, you pray.
Right.
But here, Hadith is saying, no, 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 I'm not waiting for you to come to me. I'm already here. I'm already within you. I'm already everywhere.
Hadith's going to come to you.
Exactly. It's a very different way of thinking about the divine.
Yeah, and then there's this interesting take
Okay.
on past worship,
Uh-huh.
because it says that those who worshipped Huapakroth
Okay.
were actually worshiping Hadith,
Interesting.
but ill.
Okay, so they were on the right track, but there yet.
Not quite there yet, because they didn't fully understand that Hadith is the worshiper,
Okay, so Hadith is both.
the object of worship and the worshiper.
Right, both the subject and the object.
Exactly, which kind of blows your mind a little bit.
Right.
But it speaks to this idea that the very impulse to worship, to seek something higher, comes from Hadith itself.
So it's like it's emanating out from
within.
Hadith.
Yeah, it's not something that we impose on the divine. It's something that the divine is expressing through us.
Okay, so now the text takes a turn
Okay.
for, I would say, the more positive. Yeah.
Okay.
It says existence is pure joy.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. All the sorrows are but as shadows.
So they're not real.
Right. They pass and are done.
Transient.
But there is that which remains.
So joy is the underlying reality.
Right. And suffering is just this
Temporary illusion.
temporary illusion that we get caught up in.
Right, so we can choose to
Focus on the joy
focus on the joy.
rather than the sorrow,
Okay.
which is kind of a radical idea when you think about it.
Right, I mean, how often are we actually
we're-
dwelling on the negative?
Yeah, we're really good at focusing on the negative.
We're wired for it almost.
Right. Right.
But this is saying, no, 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 that's not the true reality. Joy is the true reality.
Oh.
But then it goes on to
Yeah.
really condemn reason.
Okay. Reason.
And because,
So logic is out.
it really goes after because.
Okay. How so?
It says because is a curse.
The long words.
Yeah, and that reason is a lie because of an infinite and unknown factor.
Okay. So the idea being that reason can only take us so far
Right.
because there are things that are just beyond our comprehension.
And if we try to apply reason to those things,
We're going to get it wrong
we're going to get it wrong.
because our reason is limited.
Right. And then
Yeah.
it says, if will stalks and cries, why? Invoking because, then will stops and does not.
So analysis paralysis.
Right. Overthinking it.
Overthinking it. Yeah.
If power asks why, then is power weakness.
So you have to act decisively,
Right. Without hesitation.
guided by your will
Okay. So this rejection
of reason.
of reason
Yes.
seems to kind of spill over
Okay.
into how it talks about
Morality.
morality, yeah, and social order.
All right. Let's hear it.
It says, we are not for the poor and sad. The lords of the earth are our kinsfolk.
That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, what do we?
It's definitely going against the grain of traditional morality.
Yeah, because it's saying we align ourselves with the strong and the powerful.
Right. The successful.
Not with the poor and the sad.
The downtrodden.
Right.
So it's a very different way of looking at things.
Yeah, and then it gets even more intense
Okay.
with this question. Is a god to live in a dog?
Rhetorical question.
Yeah, no. But the highest are of us.
So there's a hierarchy.
Yeah, a clear hierarchy of
Beings.
beings.
And those who are at the top, the highest, are the ones who are aligned with this new knowledge, with Hadith.
Right, and then it says,
Yeah.
they shall rejoice.
The chosen.
They shall rejoice.
The chosen.
Whose sorrow is not of us.
So sorrow is a sign of
Of not being part of the chosen.
not being part of the elect. Yeah.
And the qualities associated with,
This elect group.
yeah, with us
Okay,
are
let's
really vivid.
Yeah.
Beauty and strength, leaping laughter and delicious languor, force and fire.
Oh, Very dynamic.
Yeah, very intense.
A lot of energy.
Passionate.
Passionate, yeah.
Yeah, and then it takes this
Dark turn.
really
A hard turn.
hard turn, yeah. We have nothing with the outcast and the unfit. Let them die in their misery, for they feel not.
That's a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, it's really saying, we don't care about those who are not part of us.
Right. They're not even worth our attention.
Let them die in their misery.
And the justification being that they feel not.
Right, so it's like,
Dehumanizing them.
yeah, it's really
Othering them.
othering them, saying, they're not like us, they don't feel like us.
So we have no obligation to them.
Right.
It's a very harsh perspective.
And then it goes on to say,
I'm almost afraid to ask.
compassion is the vice of kings. Stamp down the wretched and the weak. This is the law of the strong. This is our law and the joy of the world.
Wow, so compassion is bad.
Yeah.
Especially for those in power.
Right, it's a complete inversion
Of traditional morality.
Yeah.
Where compassion is seen as a virtue.
Right.
Here, it's a vice.
It's saying trample on the weak. That's the law of the strong, and that's what brings joy to the world.
a very disturbing idea.
Very disturbing.
Yeah.
But then there's this interesting statement about the king.
Okay.
It says, verily thou shalt not die, but live.
So, immortality?
Right, but then there's a condition.
Oh.
If the body of the king dissolve, he shall remain in pure ecstasy forever.
Okay, so it's not physical immortality.
Right, it's like a spiritual immortality.
A transcendence.
Yeah, transcendence of the physical body.
Into a state of pure bliss.
Right.
Interesting.
So now we're introduced to this
The
serpent imagery.
Oh, okay, the serpent.
Yeah, because Hadid is described as the snake that giveth knowledge and delight and bright glory and stir the hearts of men with drunkenness.
So the serpent is a symbol of
Wisdom.
wisdom, transformation.
Transformation, yeah.
Primal energy.
And here it's connected to...
Knowledge, delight, glory, a kind of spiritual intoxication.
Right.
And it says we should worship it with...
Wine and strange drugs.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, that's not your typical...
It's a school lesson.
Right, it's saying use these substances to alter your consciousness, to connect with Hadid.
Right, to experience the divine.
Yeah, and then it goes on to say
Okay.
that we should lust, enjoy all things of sense and rapture.
So no self-denial here.
No, it's very much an embrace of
Pleasure.
the senses. No God shall condemn thee for this.
So it's like a divine sanctioning of
indulgence.
Or
yeah.
indulgence, yeah.
Yeah, and then this
Messy.
really powerful statement. I am alone. There is no God where I am.
So Hadith is the ultimate reality.
Right. There's nothing beyond it.
Nothing outside of it.
Yeah. And then we have this description of the hermits.
Okay. Hermits, typically you think of...
Living in caves.
Right. Isolated from the world.
Yeah, but not these hermits.
Okay, so what's different?
They're found in beds of purple, caressed by magnificent beasts of women with large limbs and fire and light in their eyes and masses of flaming hair about them.
Wow, that's not your typical hermit.
No, it's a very different kind
Solitude.
Solitude, yes.
Like they're still engaged with the world, but
in a very specific way.
in a very specific way.
Yeah, and it says they're seen at rule, at victorious armies, at all the joy.
So they're not just hiding away in pleasure.
No, they're participating in life.
They're experiencing life to the fullest.
1,000,000 times greater than this.
So their joy is amplified.
Yeah, it's like their connection to Hadid.
Enhances everything.
Enhances everything.
Makes it more vibrant, more intense.
Yeah, and then it gets a little bit
very aggressive.
aggressive again, yeah.
Okay.
Because it says to the chosen, ye are against the people, O my chosen.
So there's a clear division.
Yeah, between the chosen and everyone else.
Right.
And it goes on to say,
yeah.
On the low, men trample in the fierce lust of your pride in the day of your wrath.
Yikes, that's pretty violent.
Yeah, it's really advocating for domination and subjugation.
Of those who are not part of the chosen group.
Right.
And it's linking it to pride and wrath.
Yeah, very intense.
Powerful
emotions.
Yeah.
And then we come back to this.
Serpent
imagery.
Okay.
The secret serpent coiled about to spring. In my coiling, there is joy.
So there's a sense of potential energy.
Yeah, like a coiled spring.
Ready to be unleashed.
And it's saying, even in this coiled state, there is joy.
So there's a joy in anticipation.
Right, in the potential.
In the power that's being held back.
And then it explains that when the serpent lifts its head, that unites Hadid and Nu.
So it's like a connection between the finite
Right.
and the infinite.
Yeah. But when it droops its head and shoots venom,
Venom.
brings rapture of the earth.
Okay, so that's the connection between Hadia and the earth.
Right.
So the serpent is like this intermediary.
Right. It's connecting all these different realms.
Connecting the spiritual and the material.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But then there's this warning.
Warning, okay.
It says there's great danger.
For who?
For those who don't understand these reams.
So you have to understand this knowledge.
Right.
Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Yeah, because you'll fall into...
What do they call it?
The pit called because.
Oh, no, not because.
Yeah, because is bad.
We already learned that.
Because is the enemy.
Yeah, you'll perish there with the dogs of reason.
So reason will lead you astray.
It's saying you have to go beyond reason to truly understand this.
To grasp these higher truths.
Right.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
And then it talks about rituals.
Okay, so rituals are important.
Yeah, it says they should be rightly performed with joy and beauty.
So it's not just about going through the motions.
Right, it has to be done with feeling.
With intention.
Yeah, with intention.
And beauty.
And beauty.
Interesting.
And it even gives us a list.
Oh, a list of rituals.
Yeah, there's the feast for the first night of the prophet and his bride.
Okay.
The 3 days of the writing of the book of the law.
Okay.
The feast for Tahuti and the child of the prophet.
Right.
The feast for the supreme ritual.
Okay.
And the feast for the equinox of the gods.
So marking these important occasions.
Yeah. And then there's feasts for fire, water, life, death.
Yeah. And it says, a feast every day in your hearts in the joy of my rapture.
So daily celebration of Hadit.
A feast every night unto new.
So honoring both new and Hadit.
Right.
Through these feasts.
Okay. And then for those who are wondering about what happens after death.
It's a big question.
Yeah, it says, there is no dread hereafter. There's the dissolution and eternal ecstasy in the kisses of new.
So death is not the end?
No.
It's emerging back into the source.
Right, into
that infinite potentiality.
Eternal ecstasy.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad at all.
But then it contrasts that with death for the dogs.
So there's a different fate.
Yeah, for those who
don't align themselves.
Who don't follow this path.
With Hadit.
Right.
Okay, so there are consequences.
Yeah, and then there's this continued
rejection
of pity and consolation. It says, pity not the fallen. I never knew them. I am not for them. I console not. I hate the consoled and the consoler.
Wow, that's harsh.
Yeah, no room for sympathy here.
It's like saying everyone is responsible for their own fate.
Right. Sink or swim.
Yeah, and if you sink, well...
Too bad.
That's your problem, right?
Not mine.
So Hadit is presented as unique and conqueror.
And not a conqueror of...
slaves that perish.
So there's this idea of...
the being of
the masses.
Yeah, transcending...
the ordinary.
The
mundane.
Right, and then there's all this talk of...
colors.
Yeah.
Okay, the color.
Blue and gold.
Okay.
A red gleam in the eyes.
Interesting.
Purple and green spangles.
Very visual.
Yeah, and then there's purple beyond purple.
Purple beyond purple.
Which is described as a light higher than eyesight.
So it's like a spiritual light.
Yeah, something beyond...
our normal perception.
Right.
Fascinating.
And then it talks about the black veil.
The black veil. Yeah, it says, it is the veil of the modest woman. It is the veil of sorrow and the pall of death. This is none of me. Tear down that lying specter of the centuries. Veil not your vices in virtuous words. These vices are my service. You do well, and I will reward you here and hereafter.
So modesty, sorrow, death, these are all things to be rejected.
Yeah, it's saying don't hide your true self. Don't be ashamed of your desires.
Embrace your vices.
Yeah, because these vices are my service.
So what we normally consider to be bad is actually good in this context.
Right, it's a complete reversal of values.
Yeah, very interesting.
And then it talks about the prophet.
The one who received this message.
Right, and it says to him, thou shalt not be sorry.
So reassurance.
Yeah, thou art emphatically my chosen.
So he's been chosen for this task.
Right, but it also says that he's masked in sorrow.
So he's going to appear to be suffering.
Yeah, so that people might think he's fallen.
Okay, but it's just a mask.
Right.
A test, perhaps.
Yeah, and it says, I will lift thee up.
So he will be vindicated in the end.
Right. And those who reject his words, they're called slaves of because.
So again, because is the enemy.
Right, and they're not of me.
So they're not part of this new way of knowing. They're still stuck in the old ways.
And then there's this interesting instruction
Okay.
regarding the English alphabet.
The alphabet, okay.
Yeah, it says define the order and value of the letters
Interesting.
and define new symbols.
So create a new symbolic language
Yeah, almost like a code.
to express this new knowledge.
Right, and then it warns
Is it warning?
the mockers.
The mockers, okay.
Yeah, it says their laughter will not last.
So don't make fun of this.
Yeah, take it seriously.
Or else.
Yeah, or else you'll be sad.
And sadness is a sign of being forsaken.
Right.
So it's not a laughing matter.
And then it talks about
What's
these fixed states.
okay, fixed states. Like
Yeah.
what's
He that is righteous shall be righteous still. He that is filthy shall be filthy still.
so no room for change.
Yeah, like you're born into a certain state.
And you stay there.
Yeah. The kings of the earth shall be kings forever. The slaves shall serve.
So a very rigid hierarchy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then
Yes.
it introduces these masked ones, my servants.
Masked ones. Okay, so
They could be anyone.
appearances can be deceiving?
Yeah. A beggar could be a king.
Interesting.
Yeah, it says, love all, lest perchance is a king concealed.
Okay, so be careful who you disrespect.
Right.
Because you might be disrespecting a king in disguise.
But then it says,
Oh.
that is the law of the battle of conquest.
Wow.
Thus shall my worship be about my secret house.
So it's like a test
Yeah.
to see who can discern the true king.
And then it says,
Yeah.
strike hard and low.
Again with the violence.
That's, this idea of
Abomination.
asserting your power.
And then the prophet sees.
What is see? A light before thine eyes.
Okay.
But it's undesired, most desirable.
So it's something that's both attractive and repulsive.
Yeah, like it's overwhelming.
Maybe even terrifying.
Yeah.
But you can't look away.
And then he's lifted up in the heart and kissed by the stars.
It's a very ecstatic experience.
Yeah, voluptuous fullness of the inspiration.
Wow, that's quite a description.
And then
Yes.
sweetness of the expiration.
So both the inhalation and the exhalation.
Yeah, both are part of this.
Divine experience.
And then there's a hailing
Oh,
of the prophet.
okay.